You know, seismic shifts in politics sometimes aren't appreciated in real time. The urgent often overtakes the important deadlines to avoid government shutdowns, for instance. Crowd out significant but quiet shifts in public sentiment, blah, blah. And then they talk about Trump era. So we're not going to. Well, one of those spasms manifested Tuesday night on the shores of Lake Michigan as Chicago voters, for the first time since 1989, denied an incumbent mayor re-election. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, a 60-year-old, listen to this, look, this is funny, a 60-year-old former federal prosecutor who became the first Black woman and the first openly homosexual person to lead America's third biggest city, failed to advance to an April 4th runoff after carrying each of the city's 50 wards just 4 years ago. So to understand, people, 50 wards in the city of Chicago, she carried all of them last election. Do you guys understand? All of them. While Lightfoot entered Election Day as something of an underdog, the extent of her loss was striking. In a city known for its political leaders' longevity and the machine's ability to defend its own cogs, the hiccup showed that Lightfoot had misread this fraught moment, failing to grasp that even weary voters of deep blue Chicago will put up with persistent upticks in crime for so long, and that the realities of a pandemic and racial justice protests have clashed with the city's self-image. The result, Lightfoot closed out Tuesday in a distant third place. So the runoff is going to be between Vallas and Johnson. None of the mayoral candidates in Chicago are good people. None of them are good. So don't think like, oh man, winning in Chicago. No, but Lori Lightfoot not being able to win is rather amazing. Okay. Even Lightfoot's biggest defenders will concede. Listen to this. This is time for you. Even Lightfoot's biggest defenders will concede her lone term has not been without unique challenges. So they're making excuses for her here. The pandemic threw mayors of cities great and small for loops. I mean, not all of them. Teachers' unions rightly had questions about their personal safety, as well as the wisdom and limits of virtual classrooms. The upheaval that rocks small towns and metropolises alike about policing practices and racial justice opened very necessary conversations in Chicago. Meanwhile, a mandate for those policing the city cleaved her from the support of her city's public safety teams. No kidding. In a crime wave that never seemed to go to low tide, prompted Lightfoot's administration, get this, to test a tactic usually reserved for fantasy novels or comic book movies. She literally raised the bridges to quarantine parts of the city from its neighbors. Homicide rates were like those of the 1990s, but the politics were not. On top of that, her tough negotiating style, the one that gave her credibility as corruption-busting outsider. No, she is the corruption, people. My gosh. I can't read any more of this. I can't. I'm sorry. I got to move on. But I want to go to this one from the New York Post. This is what she has blamed it on. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot blames election losses on racism and gender. I kid you not. Democrat Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot blamed racism and her gender for her land. What is her gender? Can she claim a gender? What is she saying? She's a woman? This is so interesting. Anyways, and her gender for her landslide defeat I thought gender wasn't even a thing anymore. As Chicagoans, weary of rising crime on her watch, celebrated her fall from political rock star to rock bottom. Was she ever a political rock star? I'm a Black woman in America, of course, she replied when asked by a reporter if she'd been treated unfairly. But she called being Chicago mayor's the honor of a lifetime, regardless of tonight's outcome. We fought the fights and we put this city on a better path. Blah, blah, blah. So now I want to give you a couple wins here. One win here.